Good morning. Warm welcome to reInvent. I still get to say this on the morning of day one, and a very warm welcome to our session on accelerating transformation. My name is Jana Werner. I work with the largest customers of AWS, their executive teams and their transformation leaders, and I help them shape their transformation journeys, becoming data-enabled, whatever that means. Of course, a lot of Gen AI journeys at the moment, cloud modernizations, and a lot of ways of working as well. My team works with these customers all around the world, the innovation and transformation team, and what we see again and again as a key challenge to transformation is actually accelerating time to value and time to impact. And that is especially present now with all the generative AI work that's going on. I've got customers that have more pilots than United, but really struggling to get to value. So we thought in today's session, we share with you what are the common factors that we see that create this challenge, and what are some really practical things we can give you to take away into your organizations to see how you can accelerate time to impact and time to value. In the second part of the session, I'm absolutely thrilled to invite my co-speaker, Alexei Seitz, onto the stage to share his journey, his absolutely dramatic journey of PrivatBank's transformation during the times of the Ukrainian war. I know we promised you the CEO Mariusz to join us, but as you can imagine, the situation in Ukraine is quite volatile at the moment. So at the very last minute, Mariusz wasn't able to join us, but I'm super thankful that Alexei was able to take his place and made a really difficult journey, crossing the border with the help and support of the Secret Service, traveling halfway around the world, and he's here with us. And he's the leader and the right-hand man of Mariusz, leading all these journeys. So I'm very excited to welcome him so he can share his story with you. Right, let's jump in. Why is it so hard to accelerate transformation? And what does it even mean to accelerate? And what are you transforming to? To answer that question, it's helpful to remind us that, oddly, the way we operate and the way we think about organizations is still very much influenced by the 19th century way of understanding and thinking about organizations. So Frederick Taylor, Ford, and so on. And what we tend to focus on in this way that we've learned to operate is optimizing for prediction in a top-down command and control way, maintaining order and driving efficiency. Of course, efficiency is more important than anything, especially today. But this kind of way of working and thinking has mainly been designed for deconstructing repetitive work and optimizing this repetitive work. In today's world, with accelerated cycles of innovation and of business change, this no longer works. There's not so much repeatable work. There's actually a need for people in our organizations learning new skills faster, applying those new skills, and doing that by solving complex problems together. So this way of thinking, how we organize and how we structure and how we think about organizations also influences how we transform our organizations. We try to take the same mechanistic, predictable way, designing beautiful transformation programs with taglines, starts and ends, imposing them on the organization, changing an operating model, introducing new technology, and out comes our transformation and everything's great, right? Not quite. On top of that, we're also often tempted to copy and paste what has worked elsewhere. But that is just about as successful as copying and pasting a personality. And when we try to do that, again, looking at what's the easiest thing to copy and paste is the mechanics of something. So I see it again and again with my customers trying to implement agile ways of working. What's the easier and mechanical thing to do? We copy the rituals, the stand-ups, the sprints, the retrospectives. We copy the titles, the Scrum Master, and so on. But we're actually struggling to copy the intent of this way of working. So where is the people over process? And often we don't get much faster to value either way. The same is with product teams. I see so many product teams where project managers simply get a change of title but don't know how to work as a product manager, and we still actually have feature teams rather than product teams. Same for OKRs, and the list goes on and on. So no wonder that we have these stark numbers, which I'm sure you've seen your version of these numbers over time, of 70 to 90% of transformations not seeing their benefits realized. But not only that, we also then see people being demoralized, demotivated, exhausted, talent loss, and an impact on short and long-term revenue and customer success of our organizations. Now, if we double-click a bit on that and look a bit deeper, why is this happening? It's because we still treat our organizations and their transformations as a complicated problem to solve. And the systems thinkers here in the room will know what I mean. For anyone else, it's a bit like thinking about an organization like a car engine, where you can take some pieces and some cogs out, you can implement a new operating model, implement a new technology, and then everything runs great. But actually, organizations aren't complicated, they're complex. So not like car engines and not like a game of chess, where there's no hidden information, where there's no uncertainty and no surprises that you can think through. It's exactly the opposite. We have a large interaction of different components where the outcomes of these interactions is unsure. There's a lot of uncertainty from the outside world, from how your teams and people react. And these changes and transformations to organizations touch everything once you start. Who you hire, how you promote, how you incentivize, how you organize, and what technology you use. So what we're inviting you to do is thinking about transformation in a completely different world. And I'm actually so tired of the word transformation, you can look later, the T has fallen off my laptop. We are inviting you to look at this as an ongoing process, switching on the people in your organization. If things are uncertain and you need to learn your way through change rather than imposing mechanistic, predetermined programs, you need to rely on those people that are close to the problems, close to the customers, close to the new technology to solve these problems and work your way and iterate and learn your way through changes. So I invite you to think about your organizations and your change coming together in a different way. Your organization no longer has an end state. Change isn't a program that starts, changes, and finishes. You keep evolving and advancing. Your organization exists to deliver outcomes, giving people outcomes against which they can start and learn and optimize how to change, how to transform, how to advance. And that brings us to agility being the only competitive advantage that is continuous and that remains. Everything else, everything you can create, can be recreated by someone else. This kind of thinking puts people in the center. It puts the people in your organization in the center, switching them on, tapping into their collective intelligence. But it also switches on and puts people in the center that your organizations exist for, your customers, and striving to better and better improve and advance for meeting your customer needs better. In Amazon, we encapsulate or term this our day one culture. Some of you might have heard about this. We're a large company, but we're still trying to keep the mindset, the way of thinking, and the vitality of a small company, making quick decisions and being able to spot and adopt trends quickly. So, to get there, we need to move our thinking and our way of thinking about organizations from exerting control, order, efficiency, to the other side, and seeing how can we create clarity so that people can understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, why we're changing it, and help doing that throughout your organization, creating broad ownership for this change, and creating the curiosity to learn and learn your way through a complex problem and finding the answers. Let's have a deeper look at those three terms, clarity, ownership, and curiosity. We have bucketed a number of accelerants that hopefully you can get some inspiration from today and take them with you and try them in your organizations. Starting with clarity. I've picked 3 here, but there's actually 20 or more under this, and each deserve their own presentation. Starting with, why are you changing? So many of our leaders, or let's say differently, you're gonna hear a presentation about war. You have all lived through the pandemic. And the answer I always get when I say you need to create clarity is, yeah, but we're not gonna construct a war and the pandemic is over. So how can I create this clarity of what's needed like we had during a pandemic? And how can I get people involved to understand what's going on? And there's the leaders that I work with that do this well, spend a lot of time creating a really strong why. And the why isn't, I want to increase my EBITDA by X, or I want to increase my revenue, or I need to meet certain benchmarks, because that doesn't get your people out of the bed in the morning. A purpose, a why, needs to speak not only to minds, but much more importantly to hearts. And often this can be created by thinking about what's the customer outcome you're trying to achieve, connecting to the customer, and painting a picture of the future that people can buy into. And I'll give you an example about that in a minute. The second way, an accelerant for your changes, is to think about and reducing priorities. Most companies I work with are addicted to doing many, many things. I've worked with a global retailer who had 400 priority projects. If everything's a priority, nothing is a priority. The teams were pulled into 1,000 different directions, and most of the customers that I have seen would rather cut their costs than their priorities. So thinking very carefully about how can you do less, and Alexei will tell a great story about this. How can you do less, faster, and then do the next things? And there's a lot about, maybe you don't have to say no, but you can say not yet. Maybe you can start using sunset or kill criteria so you don't fall into sunk cost fallacies. Maybe you can start working slower and iteratively and see what you've committed to actually works. The last key point that I've picked out of this bucket of clarity is brought to life really nicely by a conversation I had with a former SVP of product at Nike. And he said, I had a real problem with incentives. They were so misaligned that the teams got into a political power game and gridlock, and we couldn't move. They had one team that was incentivized to quickly design new products, for example, footwear. They would use the standard materials they know, designing new trainers, and they would be fast. He had another team that was incentivized to think about sustainability and try new materials. But of course, the footwear team that was incentivized to work quickly and create reliable products, why would they use the new materials? It goes entirely against the incentivization. So one of the key things I've learned is when we align, especially transformation leadership teams on the incentives, suddenly the doors open beyond the silos and you can start doing horizontal work across silos with cross-functional teams and more. 3 little practical things around that. First of all, when you create your why, use simple language. This whole idea of we're going to become a data-driven company that will use our global synergies to, what? You've already lost me. It's really easy to hide behind this jargon, but if your 12-year-old child or your family doesn't understand what you're doing, there's probably little buy-in from your employees either. And if you want to see a really good example, look up how Netflix are writing their strategy and their purpose. Tell stories. We know from researching storytelling that when we listen to stories and we put people in an MRI machine, all parts of their brain light up. It's like they're there during the story. That creates a good feel-good chemical called oxytocin. That in turn creates trust with the people who tell the stories. A really nice and simple examples of visualizing these stories too is a customer I worked with who put in the boardroom and in every meeting room a big jar of marbles. And this big jar that everybody could see during the daily meetings meant personated the number of customers that they were losing every day. So the purpose of their company, the storytelling and the simple visualization was around everybody every day, to say, this is why we're working differently, this is why we're changing. And lastly, pick your hell yeses to prioritize. If you aren't in the room and you say, hell yes, we need to do this, then it's maybe something you don't have to do. That's a very, very simple test of trying to prioritize something. Now, let's look at ownership. First of all, we usually give people, or we have an addiction in the still 19th century of thinking of giving people tasks, because our whole thinking goes about decomposing work into tasks. Instead, start switching people on and give them problems to solve. Tap into everybody's skills and abilities. Secondly, principles over process. Most companies are in a jungle and red tape of processes so that people can't even show any ownership more. We're addicted to process. And Steve Jobs called process a disease. What we first of all do is every time something goes wrong, we set up a new process. So we don't just punish the one person that did something wrong, but everyone else in the process too. And secondly, from this 19th century way of thinking, we believe that when people do a certain task, we can abstract and codify this into a process so that we can scale it. Of course, that might work with repeatable work, but that doesn't work with knowledge worker work. So giving you a really simple example, take an expense process, 20 steps of approvals. How can you turn this into a principle? A principle could be, please spend the money like it was your own. And then we're going to do a few audits here and there to see if people do. The other way to manage this process is to say, can I reduce it? Can I cut it from 20 approvals to 2? And the third one is, can I automate it? Can I auto-approve all the approvals, all the expenses to a certain amount of money, and after that I go and actually look at them. This takes work, and it takes active leadership, and it is leadership's job to fight against this process and give people more principles so that they get switched on instead of blindly following processes and can actually think and apply these principles to their ownership. Lastly, easily said, accelerate decisions. So many organizations work in big committees. It takes weeks or months. You have to have pre-meetings to meetings to convince someone to say the right thing and help you get through what you need to. Big PowerPoints. I've been through this. I've tried to transform a bank. This is about as painful as it gets to get a committee to agree to do something. And I see a lot of nods here. I feel your pain. I have been there. I've aged 10 years in 2 years of this process of trying to accelerate decisions. How can you do that? Amazon uses single-threaded leaders. Talking about ownership, give someone ownership for decisions. Make the decisions smaller if you want to, so they have less impact, and do them more often. And then there's something that a really famous poker player, a woman who won $4 million on poker money, Annie Duke, and she also has a PhD in decision science. I wish I'd had her career. She talked about when you already have made a big decision, like which restaurant you go to, once you look at the menu, it's a fast decision. Whether you pick this dish or that dish doesn't matter because you love the restaurant. So think about how important are your decisions. Is it a picking decisions like the meal in the restaurant? Make them fast. It doesn't matter. You don't have to go deep. If it's a bigger decision like hiring your next CFO, okay, take it a bit slower. A key misconception about ownership is that people think, okay, I've given ownership, now I have to lead less. That is actually not the case. It's not about leading less, it's leading differently. It's leadership's job then becomes, if you give more ownership, to provide the conditions that people can live up and work up to their potential and grow and develop. This is about coaching, about removing roadblocks. Secondly, become anti-bureaucratic. I've given you 3 examples. What can you do with the process? Can you eliminate it? Can you automate it? Can you turn it into principles? And lastly, break dependencies. We say dependencies are defects. And in Amazon and in AWS, we accept that we maybe create some more duplications, and we're okay with this because the upside of breaking the dependencies so that owners can go and get on with things is much higher than creating a little bit of duplication. Let's come to our last bucket, curiosity to accelerate your journey. Switch from output to value. Instead of asking people to deliver something, think about what's the value you're creating. To innovate. So you go from internal focus on proxy things that people do, like delivering a project, to thinking about what customer or business value am I creating. And very closely linked to that is you get what you measure. Some of you might be familiar with Goddard's law. Basically, if you give people a metric to meet, they will do everything they can to meet that metric if they're incentivized for it. Often even at the detriment of the company, as Peter Drucker said. So switch your thinking about how you use metrics to learn, use relative metrics to course correct, to adjust, and work out with your owners what the metrics should be that help you accelerate your journey. Lastly, of course, built-in development. That's easily said, but I see so many companies that use the standard tick box PowerPoints or send people on a course And then these people come back and go, I can't apply what I've learned in my organization. The famous one is sending people on agile trainings and more. At Rabobank, for example, leaders will go with their teams and immerse themselves into new technologies, into new ways of operating, into new customer experiences together. That means they learn together and they can contextualize what they learn and start seamlessly introducing it into their day jobs. On curiosity, to get from output to value, a really, really simple thing to do is switch to customer language. I worked with a financial services company that no longer said, we want to sell mortgages. They said, we want to put people in homes. And suddenly people can think about, your people in your company can think about, how do I do this? How do I put myself in their shoes? How do I meet their needs? Similarly, a car manufacturer switched to saying, we want to create more mobility. And by the way, that also opened up much more ways of thinking about helping and meeting new customer needs than just manufacturing cars. Next, to be really curious and open-minded, don't fall in love with the solution. Think 55 minutes of the hour about the problem to solve, and then in 5 minutes, the answer will come. So think more about the problem, and that's from Albert Einstein, by the way. And lastly, seek disconfirming data. So don't fall for the groupthink. Don't run ahead with something that creates a lot of sunk cost that you then have to stick with. First, find out, is this the right thing? Should I change my opinion? How can I surround myself with people who have difference of opinion? And that creates true curiosity. If done well, these 3 topics will actually reinforce each other. When you give clarity, people can take more ownership because they understand the context in which they operate, why they're doing something, and what they own. When people have ownership, there's a lot of research with some seminal papers in the 1970s and then books like Daniel Pink's Drive that say that ownership creates curiosity. And Alexei will tell us a bit about that too. And once you have curiosity, you can experiment, you can learn, you can disprove things, you can get more data, and that data helps you to create more clarity and so on. So that's the thoughts from the Innovation and Enterprise Transformation team. But now I'm much more excited to welcome Alexei to the stage to share some real-life stories of how PrivatBank has accelerated their journey. Please help me welcome Alexei.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming all this way.
I'm so excited to be here today. This is my first time in re:Invent. It's an incredible event.
Brilliant. First time also in the US,
in the
and
US,
you made it straight to a
second day, actually.
You made it straight to an ice hockey game, didn't you? Pretty
yes,
cool.
yes.
Right, Alexei, do you want to tell us a bit about your role?
Sure. Alexei Zayats, I'm working in PrivatBank Ukraine, and as a chief cloud and IT architect, I was one of the leaders of our emergency cloud migration due to the war, which I share with you this story today. And also now I'm responsible for transformation and modernization of our cloud life and cloud platforms.
Brilliant. Do you want to introduce to the audience who PrivatBank are and what you do and how important you are to the Ukrainian people?
PrivatBank is the largest retail bank in Ukraine. We was founded in 1992. In 2016, we was nationalized, and now we are state-owned bank. We are serving more than half of Ukrainian population now, so we're quite important for financial stability of our country. We have a wide network of our branch offices and banks like ATM and POS terminals. Also, we are famous by our mobile banking application, Private24, which is used by more than 13 million of clients. And we are offering classical banking products like payments, cards, loans, credits, and deposits.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And you are much more than a bank, right?
Absolutely. We also, on top of classical banking, we are power software house because of more than 90% of our systems which provide services to the clients developed internally. We have 1,600 of IT employees, half of them dealing with this development process and creating this stuff. We are quite a high-load transactional bank. In high business time, we are processing 2.5 million transactions per hour. And back in early 2022, we had two data centers on Ukrainian territory. About 1,000 of physical servers located here, which hosted about 8,500 virtual machines and stored 11 petabytes of data.
Awesome. So in February 2022, things became very, very difficult. Can you share a bit with the audience the reality you were facing?
Unfortunately, in February 2022 started full-scale invasion war in Ukraine, and we significantly dropped our financial and economical metrics of Ukraine. We assess more than $100 billion losses due to damage and destroying our critical infrastructure. Our GDP decreased up to 45%, and our inflation rate now about 30%.
And that became quite difficult for supporting your customers too.
Absolutely. On top of our financial metrics, the first one priority for the bank, this is people safety, this is safety of our employees, and this is safety of our customers. We also had damaged our branch network. We have number of destroyed or damaged branches, number of branches located on the occupied territory, and it dramatically changed our user experience. And for more and more people in Ukraine now rely on electronic payments and digital channels, so they don't come to ATMs to withdraw cash or go to the branch to create the cards.
You lived and lived during that time in quite a difficult reality, wondering where things were standing, what would happen next, your children, looking after them, looking after your employees.
Yes, unfortunately, our employees also almost 3 years working in war mode as our new business as usual, and constant air alarms, missile attacks on Ukrainian territory. We try to help our employees. We relocate part of them to the western part of the country, which most safest. Also, we are lucky because after COVID period, a lot of people of head office can work in remote mode, and that's why they can work from shelters. They are constantly relocating across the country, and also our children can go to school due to this situation in Ukraine, and our employees bring it together with them.
How did the war impact the bank's operations?
For me, as an IT person, the main focus that time was on protecting our infrastructure. And as I mentioned before, we had 2 data centers on Ukrainian territory. And unfortunately, in February, we had 2 missiles attack very close to them. And we start considering how to protect our infrastructure on-prem. We had a number of options. First option to relocate our equipment to the data center abroad, but it's not possible due to weeks of downtime, which cannot accept it for our clients. Also, renting a data center abroad with prepared equipment for our capacity also did not option because of up to 6 months famous providers of colocation assessed creation such a complex capacity infrastructure. And the last option which we considered was migration to public cloud. But before the war, from our national bank regulator, it was strictly prohibited because of risk they assessed.
You see here, you've shared a picture with us. This was the attack on the data center, right?
Yes, it's not ours data center, it's our government data center, which was attacked by enemies. By the way, we choose AWS by default because we previously had experience with AWS. We had installed and created infrastructure, number of tier channels, and it was impossible to build it during the first months of war because providers start to stabilize their systems, and new products and new installments didn't accept it. And finally, we choose AWS and got approval from National Bank and from since 8th of March 2022, we started immediately in 24/7 work on our cloud emergency migration.
So from not being comfortable with cloud, you had a number of ministers meet, and you being almost alone in Kiev and getting the message that we now can suddenly move to cloud. And then everything moved very quickly, and you actually went a lot faster than many other companies, right?
Yes. First of all, I want to mention that a lot of even IT guys didn't believe that it's possible to migrate our system without deep refactoring to cloud, and we don't have enough skills. We have only a small team who has experience with AWS Cloud. By the way, they're here in this room. I'm thankful for support. Also, we started migrating our system one by one, just prioritize from the most critical to the less, and our whole team gave some freedom to choose what type of migration it will be. Some people relocating as a VMware on cloud, some people redeploying on EC2 directly. So we have no time to design our target architecture and design our landing zone, and that's why we are just guiding and supporting teams who gave freedom to do this migration as fast as possible.
So one of your accelerators was to say, we're not going to perfectly plan, we can't. We're going to give people freedom and ownership within a frame to get going, and focusing on protecting the bank and moving forward rather than, so progress over perfection.
Absolutely. And we faced with some some people didn't believe that we can migrate in cloud, and it was really helpful when we detect some leaders who migrated their system, switch over load to the cloud, and shows as an example it's possible, and it helps to our management motivate others to focus on this as a priority.
So your accelerators were ownership and freedom within a frame. Execs being involved and supporting you and removing obstacles, right?
Absolutely. Extreme focus from our senior management was really helpful, because we even have every day, even on weekends, everyday meetings with senior level management and engineering team where we discussed our blockers, coordinate our activities, and asking about some helps for teams who had experience.
I think something else happened that is really hard to switch in an organization, but that's a real accelerator. And you talked to me about what happened at Easter and the change of attitude towards failure.
Absolutely. We had a number of failures, and the most maybe important for me personally, on Easter weekend, we planned to switch to our important part of core banking, and unfortunately, we agreed maintenance window with our business and clients at the night, but unfortunately didn't fly at the morning of Sunday, and a lot of people go into the groceries or to the gift shops and cannot pay by our cards, but we got full support from management that its failure have to be solved, no rollback. We only go to Amazon and database provider to find solution, and finally afternoon on Sunday we solve this issue and start moving forward.
And you had support to work on this and not go backwards, and have support to fail and to learn and to continue. Awesome. You have encountered some of the barriers to accelerating and moving forward, and you've noted and shared some with us here. Do you want to talk about some of them and how you solved them?
Sure. At first, let me sum up that we finalized our first wave of migration, that we got fully operational setup in cloud for our critical and important system in 43 days. We migrated more than 300 of systems. It contains from different applications. So about applications number, it's up to 1,000. And we deployed about 3,500 of instances in cloud during this period. But it was only start of our journey, because some IT guys decided that we had only temporary approval to work in cloud, and that's why we don't change anything. We just relocate, rehost, lift and shift migrated our resources, and we don't want to refactor due to cloud best practices. And it was a big problem for our management because we are using cloud not efficiently, we are using not secured, and that's why we change approach, and our CEO changed target goals that we need not only migrate to cloud, we also need to switch off our on-prem infrastructure at all. And that's why we found a lot of missed models which have to be migrated as the next part of our journey.
How did you deal with some of these other challenges, like we have no resources, which is a classic I've heard a million times, or we won't get approval from the executives? How have you solved some of those?
These challenges we also had. The most maybe comfortable work with priority setting, because for every Ukrainian it's a priority to protect our bank, and it's not a questionable. About resources, we said that every project which get benefit, resources can be found. So even expenses which we agreed with AWS also help us to protect in non-optimal way, and then we started optimization process.
So once you were in the cloud and finally made it and consolidated and settled, there were a number of things that you noticed, or a number of challenges that came next. Can you share a few of those and how you're working on these now?
Sure. First of all, if we return back to our optimization waves, just after 2 waves of migration, we start optimizing our cost because we underestimated cloud budget up to 4 times maybe, and we focused on optimization, and we found that number of resources and services didn't responsible by anyone. So we established new role, we call it IT application owner. It's about ownership, which Jana mentioned before, who responsible not only as a development manager or operational manager, who responsible for whole layer of application and processes behind.
And what can you do faster now that you weren't able to do before?
On top of resilience and security, which we achieve as additional benefit from cloud migration, we got additional benefit also for our business. It's agility. Now we can implement and deploy our products faster. And I had a good example from yesterday, because on the 1st of December in Ukraine started the president program to help our people survive in the winter period, and we had to open special bank cards to give this refunds and support to our citizens. And as of yesterday, first 5 hours of this program started, we opened more than 1 million cards.
Pretty impressive. Congratulations. Awesome.
Thank you.
So lastly, you've made it into the cloud within, was it 43 days?
43.
And then...
And nights.
And nights, I bet. And so that's more like 86 then, right? 86. And you consolidated, you got to grips with it, and now you're turning your journey to an innovation journey. And you've brought us some examples here of what you're doing, how you're introducing AI, and would you like to share a bit of what the stories are and how you're starting to switch, and what helps you to switch to now think about more accelerated innovation?
Yes, and cloud help us to enable a new type of services which we start researching. First of all, they are based on AI, because it was not possible even on our on-prem resources, and we started working on a few cases. I can share some of them now. As many companies, we developed our AI system because we have internally developed knowledge base, and we created a video chat bot with to help our clients, to help our employees, serving clients' requests faster and onboarded faster. And also, we had 2 good examples in financial monitoring and anti-fraud areas. By the way, I had author of this example in the first row in this room. Slava, hello. For financial monitoring, we enrich our full text search model by Amazon Bedrock models, and it helps us to identify false positive of entering in sanction list of transactions or clients, in some cases up to 90%. And for fraud claims, we created a model which help us to convert speech to text, and when clients claim to our call center about some suspicious activities or fraud incidents, we can immediately classify it and increase our response time and decrease manual work of researching of these incidents.
Brilliant. How do you help your teams to switch and learn these skills, to innovate, to be curious, and to do these things and start scaling these things?
After this tough period with optimization cost, we now control every penny of our cloud setup. But for AI services, we got carte blanche from our management to invest as much as possible to experiment, pilot, to educate our people, and it helps find new leaders, find new cases, and nominate them to create new business scenarios for our customers.
Awesome. And lastly, I think you want to leave our audience with a bit of wisdom of what really accelerates your journey.
The last thing from my side, it's about clarity. And we really think that a new leadership KPI, it's keep people informed, inspired, and interested. And on our example, in practice, we still have this cloud meetings inside 3 times per week when we share our experience, when we show progress of and status of our projects, and we coordinate work. It helps us to keep people informed, and they much more efficient when they understand where we are going and what's our direction and problems.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story and inspiring us. I know you still get every hour or a few minutes, I see on your phone missile alerts and worry about your family. That's a whole different reality that I can't even grasp. So thank you for coming all the way and sharing the story. I will leave you with a quick summary. We've talked about clarity. Yeah, I think it does the job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish you a good transformations.
Yes. Thank you. So your quick summary: clarity, ownership, curiosity, lots of accelerators in there. A few points to keep thinking about. Make heroes. Wherever you see good behavior, positive behavior, things that work into this accelerating direction, celebrate them. Innovate everywhere, like we've just heard, not just in certain teams, not just with innovation, ivory towers. Build on what's good already and amplify it. So many transformations wipe away what existed and start new, instead of drawing on the people that are curious, that know what they're doing awesome things, and amplifying that through your organization. Go with progress over perfection. We've heard a lot on that just now. Create transparency. We've heard a lot on that as well right now. Give people data so they understand where they stand and what to do. And tap into your ecosystem. Of course, you've got AWS, but there's so many ecosystems you can tap into. A lot of banks I work with tap into startups to support the culture, ISVs, and get this culture, get the innovation going, and help accelerate your journey. So that's your summary slide. Feel free to take a picture. Thank you so much for joining us on your first day. Feel free to come and have a chat with us if you have any questions about any of these topics, if you'd like to know how this really all worked in the background and in the 43 days and nights. So Alexei, our team is here to support you, the innovation and transformation team, if you're curious how Amazon and my team support these journeys. And here are lots of other tracks that our team are also presenting in the next few days. Thank you so, so much for choosing our session. Please give us feedback. Thanks a lot for joining, and have an awesome, awesome reInvent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jana.